and welcome to Josef's Model Railway and Toy Room. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me. Just a little bit of housekeeping. You don't need to like, follow, or subscribe to any of the videos I put out there. Put them out there where I can. Have a holly jolly great time doing so. Now, this entire journey has just been, my boyhood dream coming alive on so many levels. And once again today, we are just hitting another level once again, because if I look excited and I sound excited, that's because I am. Because what I'm about to unveil to you in this one is like nothing I've ever done before. So, of course, as we've discussed, my model railway is, of course, DCC operated. So this is the digital control. We can call up and control multiple trains on the same line and do a whole range of exciting things. But for those of you that have the rather keen eye, you will have noticed that I did a video just a few videos prior regarding the wonderful little, oh, he's too far, I'm not going to go get him, the wonderful little Wickham Trolley. This is the little track maintenance crew that can go out on their little trolley and maintain the lines as needed. And I left you hanging on that one. As I put it on the track, I went to turn the control throttle up and I cut and said, ooh, I'm a real rotter. And I am. But that was because there's an important factor to do with that. Now, we're not going to exclusively be looking at that. We'll do that in the following video from this. So I'm going to break it into two quick pieces for you. But today we're going to talk just really briefly about DC control. And while, as I've mentioned, I'm doing DCC, the DC point is that the Wickham Trolley can only be controlled with a DC controller. Not just that, for anyone that may have some older locomotives and things like that and want to run them DC, the way we've wired up the track means we can do one or the other. So it doesn't really matter. And I've never really had a need to use DC at all. In fact, so much so that my first ever Hornby layout, which will be a bit of a surprise for most of you because other train experiences in my childhood weren't like that. So the first actual Hornby train set I ever got was, of course, this Flying Scotsman, which even then was not DCC equipped. It was actually done, and I believe there's a sticker on the box, yes indeed, saying that they've put the chip in and addressed it to number 9. Now, I think if, to be honest, holding this type of box, which I haven't done in more than, must be 20 years, is quite refreshing, because any child that gets the opportunity to receive a box like this, it's pretty special stuff. Now, the other thing is, I'm not sure if I can quite get into the pose, but let me just try it. I think this was the pose in the Hornby magazine. Something like that. If it's not, I'll go back and edit and we'll try again. But the pose was basically in the 1978 catalogue. There was a clear image showing this particular thing of a child holding the train set. And I always thought one day I'm going to have my own. And I did, and it was the Flying Scotsman. But we're not here to talk about that, other than the box is still as it was, apart from the train being removed and the tracks, still holds an important piece to it. So we're going to come down and have a look at that now. So here we go, this wonderful box. And as we slide it open now, as we can see, here was the original DCC fitting that needed to be done to it or what have you. Here we go with our power transformer here with the AU fitting on it for Australia. We've got these particular prongs here that we use, so that's a nice thing. And here we have our actual DC controller. And according to a recent video that talked about DC control, up to and including the most current Hornby one they send with the current train sets if you were to buy one today, which between you and me, I think looks the coolest, we discover that actually this is the one that's always worth hanging on to and is probably one of the best DC controllers you're going to find for a simple type of application, and is on par with some of the more expensive ones. So it's nice to know I have one of these. We won't be using one of those today though. So DC, direct current, or as I like to describe it, direct chaos. But for the most part here, what I want to do is we're going to take a DC controller, and not the Hornby one we just looked at, because I have something else in mind, and we're going to set it into the drawer with our controller. And ideally, I was looking for a switch similar to this, and I think the basic premise is I'm going to need to build the switch myself. It's not that the switch and the wiring is complicated, it's just that I wanted to have this nice finished plate that's etched in what it's doing, so it's nice and clear, something that really looks good in our control panel system. So I will noodle around with that and come back to that later. In fact, the whole drawer, I want to do some other bits and pieces too, but story for another day. So what we needed was a DC controller, and I thought I could get any controller really I wanted. The first one, of course, I thought of, as you can see in the pictures here, was the original Hornby controllers that came out, where you could sort of put 2 or 3 together, and you had the big white rotary knob, and I thought, that looks quite the business. And I discovered someone selling a couple of those in Australia for about $50. And then I thought, well, I've always got the Hornby one. We could pull that out and just give it a test. And I thought, well, hang on a minute. Maybe we can dig a little deeper. And then it really got me thinking into some of the old model railway magazines that I used to always thumb through from the 70s, 80s that my father had collected. And it was hard to forget the image that is still pressed in my mind of this, which was to do with the MRC Tech 2 logic controllers. And if nothing else, and obviously it would always appear in the model railroad magazines because it was more of an American thing, their controllers, as we can see from some ads here, were beautiful. They obviously took the time with the photography to add a few flares onto it so that the lights that were being used, whether it was red, green, or amber, orange, would just really stand out. And it just looked so cool. That control just really looked fantastic. Of course, I really didn't see any in Australia, being an American one. And of course, knowing what I know now, you're also going to need a voltage converter to do so. But the image, I thought, if ever money was no object, I always envisioned there'd be 3 or 4 of these controllers on the layout. Obviously, this is pre-DCC. Fast forward to 2025, and here we are, very happy with our DCC Hornby controller, which we also just have the new module now that we can control directly from our smartphones, iPhones, or whatever you might be using. So I've ticked a lot of boxes here. DC control, be good to get one of those MRC Tech 2 controllers. They looked brilliant. And most importantly, the company MRC are still making Tech controllers. I think we're up to Tech 8 or Tech 9. And as the various new models came out, they've improved. But somehow the styling didn't quite hit the mark of the Tech 2 for me. I want to just take a special moment now to completely acknowledge that the Duet controller and some of the other, the Hornby H&M one and some of the others that they make, there's some really, really good ones. And if you were on a club layout or whatever, well, I take my hat off to you because they were the ones to be using. But in my application, and I think as you've all discovered in this room, it seems to have a lot to do with looks. I'm just trying to recreate what I remember of my childhood. So I says to myself, I need one of those Tech 2 controllers. Let's jump on and see what we can have. And if it doesn't come with a box, then where's the fun in that? Let's see there. Bum bum! Well, girls and boys, ladies and gentlemen, howdy doody, how about this? In its box, smells like a beauty too. And what can I say, honestly, but here it is. So we have here the Tech 2 2500. Now I did like the dual throttle controller one with the dual green lights and the single red one in the middle. But honestly, I'm not really going to be doing it. The DC is just in every now and then. And there were some issues with the Tech 2 to do with something with throttle control and something needed replacing or burning out, or the calibration wasn't always quite spot on. Now, this one is new, still in the box, and I think it's fantastic. And if there's a problem, so what? We'll deal with it. We're not really doing anything too major. And I really don't need all these fancy switches, but you just try and stop me. That's like buying a hi-fi without the VU meters dancing around. So I really think we've got something special here. But of course, as mentioned, input 120 volts at 60 hertz. So of course, this is for the North American type of environment. Now, we're in Australia, 240 volts, so that's a bit of an issue. Now, of course, we run various voltage converters around the place for different things, but I want to have this controller in the drawer with everything else. So we're going to need a voltage converter. And what good news for me, they actually make a mini one. So if we just have a quick, and of course this is pretty much just a generic one as I understand, and there's plenty to be had at a fair price point. But here we go. So we're going to be inputting at 240 volts and stepping down to 110 volts, 350 watts. Again, we're not drawing much out of this. We're not running anything complicated. So that's more than enough overkill, and the nice clean US socket at the other end. Look, I'm not going to lie to you. There is quite a bit of weight in this. I've got to say there's got to be 2 to 3 kilos in this. And I'm always concerned about how much weight we keep lowering down into this drawer at the moment. It is solid construction the way it's been built, so it's not going to be bowing on us anytime soon. But of course, it is that additional weight against the rails that are there. But this transformer, which will mount as close as we can to an end, and that controller should slide in nicely. So I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news for anyone, but for some of you, this may be the end of the video, because all we're going to see now is me get the controller into the drawer. We may just see it light up briefly, but we're not going to be using it. We'll see that in part 2 of the Wickham Trolley, where we're actually going to run it. So in which case, let's get this thing installed and wrap this video up. Well, here we are. Hard to believe that something you dream of for so many years can actually become a reality. And in this instance, it's thanks to the wonderful institution that is, of course, eBay, for getting us to where we need to be on this one. Made in the USA. Don't worry, I had to pay my fair share of tariffs to get it here. 5-year warranty. Oh, well, I'll have to get that happening. All right, let's take a look. Oh, that's excellent. Oh, that is just glorious. Absolutely fantastic. It's just got that solid build to it that you'd expect. Oh, silky smooth. Oh, that's fantastic. And of course, you've got the brake, which is spring loaded to sort of tap to apply braking as you need, your direction, momentum on or off, and of course your on and off power. And it goes without saying, it's got to be, oh, how can I not love that look? Fantastic stuff. Of course, our American plug right here, which our trusty voltage converter is ready to accept. We just turn around to the back here, variable DC. We've got our accessories, and of course, we've got our fixed DC as well. So this is just really a rather extraordinary piece of hardware. Of course, to many Americans, there's nothing too exciting about it. But for someone in Australia to see this sitting here with the box as well, oh, I can't wait to see it light up. Let's just hope it all still works. Now, also in here, we should, here we go, a bit of paperwork. All right, here we go. It's not only feature proportional tracking control, but sophisticated. I like the sound of that. And here are the variations, of course, as we've discussed before, with the double one and single one. This would be the previous generations, if I'm not mistaken. Someone please do correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know where that reflection point is, so I'll just move the page around accordingly. Absolutely amazing stuff to be seen there. Model Rectifier Corporation, Woodbridge, Edison, New Jersey. Our instructions explaining regarding variable DC and fixed DC, and for your protection. It's an absolute winner. Couldn't be happier. Well, what we need to do next is we're going to need to find some space in the drawer for this. It's interesting here about for more than 30 years, MRC has been instrumental in developing and pioneering, popularizing the advanced features for today's power packs. Now, that's 30 years. So what are we saying? That's got to be 30 years, and this has got to be somewhere in the 80s? I don't know. No, here we go. Purchased by the Hobby Gallery, 28th of December, 1982. Well, it's 2025 now, and I might not be getting the warranty, but the fact that this is They've already been doing that for 30 years prior to this, and we've already able to add another 30, albeit 40 years on top of that. Is extraordinary stuff. So as I'm just flicking through the paperwork, and I will just take special note to say there were some others on the list I noted. Certainly, how could this not be the one I went for, particularly with the fact with the actual meters on them, not VU meters, of course, but still, an excellent choice. But it really was just that image, and it takes me directly back from what we saw in the Railway magazine ad. Something so futuristic and classy. I mean, really, this is a big deal. Special stuff. Okay, let's just bring you down to this level for the minute. Now, you remember the power supply for DCC Concepts in this box was together, and they were linked together with this little lead. Unfortunately, this is a bit of a complicated lead, this 2.5 mil one, because the rest of the world is quite devoted on using 2.1 millimeter, which, as you can probably see, they look basically identical, but it's the middle section that is slightly different. And while I can accept this into here and vice versa, this won't fit into there. Now, this box that we have here for the DCC Concepts power supply that's feeding the stuff for the points, this box has never, ever been touched. There's no buttons we need to touch. There actually is a on-off switch, but it's always set to the on position. We turn off on the master. And the only one we always need to get to is this one. So that's why we're going to split them like that. Get our throttle controller in here. So we're going to need to extend this wire. Okay, let's apply a little bit of electricity now, shall we? So far nothing has blown up, which has to be a good thing. Let's have a look here. Let's turn it on. We've got a power light. Also it says monitor. I would suspect maybe, well, I don't know. Let's check it out. That's not quite as bright as I wanted it to be, unless that monitor means it's based on the amount of power. Let's wind that up. Oh, now I really like that. That's quite good. I wonder if we were to, effortlessly smooth. Now, I wonder if we were to add this momentum on. Oh, that's a nice glow. I assume then if we were to turn the throttle up, the green will fade in. Is this correct? Yes. Yeah, that looks about right. And vice versa. If we were to stop it and bring it down, it's going to slow it down with that pulse kind of action that they would be doing at the time. So this should sort of fade right back to a nice off green. Very good. Well, now I am suitably impressed with this. And if we turn momentum off, dims right back to nothing. Okay then, well, looks like we're on a winner. Now we've got to figure out how we're going to get this thing wired onto the tracks at the moment. Well, next in our little journey here, we're going to need to get a set of wires to come in on these terminals here. Just one of these cheap and cheerful kits will do just nicely. Nice. Variable DC is where we want to do this. I don't think these would have been unscrewed since the day this may have been assembled and tested. Right, so we're all good from there. All right, so we need to get these cords connected up, and temporarily for the process we're going to need these two track wires, and we're going to need to swap between the both of them. We are working on that switching system, and these accessory ones here, which are in use, are just used at the moment for things to do with the point controller or for the mimic panel to make all this work. Even I can't explain it exactly, But sure enough, with the drawer, if we move it, you can see one of those leads go straight to one of these new ESP systems. Now, I just want to pay attention because, as you can see, I'm getting a little bit sick and tired of shabby cords that are going in and out, and the more I keep trimming back, the more cord we're just wasting, really. So I've decided I'm going to cap them, and I've just been using these little ferrule things at the moment. I just bought one of these cheapest chips types of kits at the moment. They're all much the same. You feed the cord in, and then you just crimp it on the end there. Simple sort of a device. Now, I notice most of them online are usually only a 4-way. This one actually is a hex one. And of course, as you come down, it'll crimp it and you push through it and it'll re-release it. And I thought we might do that at least to our track feeds at the moment to pretty them up a little bit. And even then, even with a switching system, if you need to change something in the future, at least it's a little more accessible. Hence why you may well notice I've left this plug here, because I thought temporarily we'll plug the track feed directly to this. So we'll just have the plugs here, which are basically going to sit here for the most part. But the ones on the end of the DC controller will just have the plug, so we could just swap out accordingly. But we need to obviously get a series of these little plugs onto them at the moment. So I think what we'll do is, it's high time we'll just trim these once and for all, do it properly. So we'll just retrim those ends again. This is a bit of a stretch. Certainly not going anywhere. Nice and solid there. And with the DC control, since we're not really sure where it's going to end up going at the moment, I might just leave some adequate tail on the end of this. I'll just quickly point out as well, you've obviously got the single one for a single cable to go through, but we also have ones that are for a double, which is exactly what we aggregated here. Now, as you can see, hopefully, if you look nice and close, you'll see there's just a little bit of wire sticking out. Now, that's okay. They're highly advised that you do feed it as far as it goes through, because you can always just tidy that up with a pair of side cutters, and you know you're getting a very respectable crimp there. There you go, just trim it up, and you know that that's definitely not going to go anywhere. This one's slightly smaller. I think that one's a 1.5 and this is a 1.1. You can probably just see there's a slight variation there between them. But that's not going to stop us from doing anything. It's just what's in the kit. Right, well, temporarily, let's not beat about the bush here, and let's do ourselves the best in not trying to get too confused on what's actually going on here. But this one is for the DC, which we'll probably leave that plug on for until we do our switchboard for it. That'll do nicely for our demonstration. Right, let's jump over and plug these in. Just remember, top tip, before we do anything, ensure you've got no DCC locomotives on there. I'm not sure what could happen, but just isolate them if that's going to be a factor. So I've got nothing on the layout at the moment, except that. And we can now feel quite privileged to try this out. And realizing I don't have any DC locomotives, I'm just going to take my chances with this older Class 37. It was a Hornby. Actually, it's not that old, but I did retrofit it with an older shell. And it does have a DCC chip in it, but it was giving me some grief. And I thought, well, let's just try it. The DCC chip is in there, but as I understand, it should work. Now, we put it on the track. And what's interesting, if you listen carefully, we wouldn't normally be doing this on a curve. Oh, let's change the direction there. I wasn't expecting pure luxury movements there, but enough to at least see that it does work. I was curious about that momentum thing, and again, let's just apply that. So even with the momentum running, when you come and tap the brake, you'll actually slow it down as needed. So, I mean, to be fair, this is about as good as you're going to get without it being digital. And considering I never had one of these in the 80s, this would have been the pinnacle owning this, not just because it looks cool, but because it is cool. But wait, there's more! That's right, if you stick with me for one more moment, I've got one more thing to show you. And it's not good. Check this out. Just when you thought it was safe to carry on, look what happens. Can't even be more than half a centimetre. I can't shut the drawer because of that knob. The funny thing is, if you check the bottom, you'll notice there are a series of feet, but that's bonded with the, moulded with the actual plastic framework, so I can't remove it. I could shave them down, I could drill some holes. We're not doing any of that today. But I do have a simple solution for anyone that might be caught in this little pickle. And that is, put it into 0 and it gently slides off. And while it's not ideal, at least the drawer will shut. Let's take those books out of there. The drawer will shut. So, just a little something for you to think about. If you're putting it into a bit of a tight area, at least you know this section can come off and away you go. But in the meantime, we're going to leave it there. We're going to come back in the next one with the Wickham Trolley to see this a bit more in action and the trolley, and we'll go from there. But girls and boys, ladies and gentlemen, as always, that's going to do it for another video that's just gotten way out of hand, and I apologise. So we'll come back to this DC controller when we come back to part 2 of using the Wickham Trolley, and we finally get to see a bit of movement going on with that one. But until then, please do stay safe. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Toodles!